Sorry that we could not continue in the last 2 3 weeks. I think I must apologize to the audience more. It is just that I felt sick terribly, and then Krishna had some sore throat trouble and all the stuff, but he was willing actually to continue. I only, as an elder person, I said, don't do that. You're already working very, very hard. Give rest, because after all, he's the one. I talk only for 5 10 minutes. He's the one talking for almost 45 minutes to 1 hour. And at this age, I don't want him to fall sick. So I deliberately ignored him for 2 weeks, and finally, he prodded me, and I said, okay, now that you have taken some rest to the throat, let us do this. So thank you very much for coming back in spite of your thing. So I am assuming that you're going to continue where we left 2 3 weeks for the continuity purpose for the audience. I might add that we were talking a little bit of concept of Visesha, which I think is really a Visesha as far as the Madhwa ontology is concerned, because that's kind of provides a fulcrum point for building the edifice of Madhva ontology. There is a reason why a Tattva ontology is what it is. It's not randomly Acharya has not built it. He's logically built it, right? One after another, one concept leading to another. That is the way he has built it. And therefore, I think it's a good idea, which, if you can elaborate a little bit on the Visesha concept and then build on to ontology. To you, Krishna.
Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Narasimha Khalajnanamatuddhanta Divakaraha Jayat Yamita Sajnana Sukha Shakti Payonidhi Abhramam Bhangarahitam Ajalam Vimalam Sada Ananda Theertha Matulam Bhaje Tapatrayapaham Apadamaudi Paryantam Gurunam Akritim Smaret Tena Vigna Pranashyanti Siddhyanti Cha Manorathaha Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om Hari Om Hari Om. Okay. So I will share my screen. So let me do a quick recap before that. So what we had told is that according to our epistemology, basically from the Pramana Shastra, whatever we had seen, we had told that basically the Shruti is the Parama Pramana. It is when it comes to Atindriya Padaartha, and for the whatever you have in the sensory realm, Pratyaksha and followed by Anumana are the Pramanas. And based on these three, we said that but the final validator or the final arbiter is the Sakshi, which is what each of us are endowed with. And that Sakshi is nothing, it's not something esoteric, it is not something inaccessible. The experience of I, which is that of the Jiva, is that the same cognitive agent in that is the Sakshi. So that is using that is what we evaluate or we separate, we demarcate illusion from reality in our day-to-day experiences. Having said that, we said we will take the all these three pramanas, consider what realms they are into, and then based on that we will draw up an ontology. So one of the first things that we did in ontology is to establish a category or an entity called as Swatantra. Swatantra is something which does not depend on another for three things. We use the phrase Satta Traividya, by the way, and it is different from the Satta Traividya of the Advaita. The Satta Traividya is three types of, it is not three things, three layers through which a thing's existence is known. One is its own nature itself, through the its cognitive capabilities, pratiti, or it being an object of pratiti, both ways, and then finally that of pramiti, pravritti, basically its volitive actions. So these, for all these three things, if there is a dependence on another, then we call that as paratantra or aswatantra, and if there is no such dependence, then we call this thing as swatantra. So there is only one swatantra. So if you take purely by logic also, you should be able to deduce that there is one swatantra tattva. So in Tattva Sankhyanam Tika, right, Sri Jayatirtha And based on the Brahma Sutras, he establishes a very solid case for accepting that there is only one Swatantra Tattva. You cannot have more Swatantra Tattvas, because then it means that they are constant. Either they are at conflict, or if you assume that they are not in conflict, it is basically you have to assume that they are really bound by each other's boundaries. So basically they cannot go beyond their each other. So they are not really Swatantra.
Can I interrupt for a moment?
Yeah, go ahead.
1 minute, sorry. I think when you say, tell me if I am thinking correctly, there is another reason as to why you cannot have two independent entities, because even assuming they're equal, even if you postulate they're equal, then at what point who will play a part, or decision maker would come, in which case there has to be an orchestrator, in which case that orchestrator becomes the independent authority, not these two. Therefore, that is what you call it's a logical fallacy to propose two independent authorities.
So perfect. So in fact, what we are saying is that, let's say there is no orchestrator, they mutually agree, right? They agree to say that this is my domain, this is your domain, you are Swatantra here, I am Swatantra here. Let's say they have a mutual agreement. So, but then that mutual agreement is binding them, so they are not really free in the full sense of Swatantra. So that is the reason why you cannot have more than one Swatantra. What if we say that there is no Swatantra at all? Let's say that everybody is Aswatantra. So that also is not a logically viable position. Is there a problem?
No problem. I took a snapshot.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So let's say there is logically, we say that everybody is Aswatantra. That also is not possible, because one, we do have some sense of feeling of independence, Svavashatva, to a little extent at least. More importantly, if such a system were there, then you cannot have any activity at all. So Jaitirtha raises an important objection in his Tika. He says that why can't we assume that mutually dependent system can bring forth this world? For example, he takes the example of you can take the lame person and the blind person. Right? So the lame person and the blind person, they are mutually dependent on each other. The lame will tell the blind, where to go. The blind will take the lame, but the lame will direct the blind. So with mutual dependence also you can explain this world. If that possibility is also flawed, says Sri Jaitirtha. He says that, for example, how does the basic contact between them itself happen? That also has to be determined by another Swatantra then, right? I mean, otherwise it will not happen. So that is the assumption. I mean, the underlying assumption is that it's a very deterministic world. So in that deterministic world, you cannot have more than one Swatantra. You cannot have zero Swatantras also. So it has to be exactly one Swatantra. If you take...
sorry again. Therefore, just for the sake of audience, some of them may not be from Madhwa Sampradaya. I want to add this. Therefore, when Ananda Theertha Muni says that Vishnu is the only Swatantra entity, right? It is not because he is playing a favoritism, with respect to Rudra or somebody. It is not because of that. Right. It is a logical conclusion that only one entity can be independent, really. Others have to depend upon this independent entity. And everybody agrees, including Advaitis, everybody agrees, Vishnu Tattva is the all-pervading Tattva. Therefore, logically adding up the Shastra as well as the sheer logic, Ananda Theertha Muni concludes there is only one independent Tattva, and that is Vishnu. And this principle is very important, because many times, many of us I would have heard other scholars talk about Taratamya, hierarchy, and then sometimes on the surface it looks very, very frivolous. Saying, what do you mean? Stratification, hierarchy on God also? What's wrong with this guy? We may think like that. But start from this point of view, start. If you accept there is only one independent principle possible in the universe, and if that principle is Vishnu, and definitely everything else has to depend upon it, and therefore a gradation happens. Therefore, the Taratamya model, which I'm very sure that you're going to explain much, much later, I would like to point out very in advance, is an arbitrary, a bias-driven model. It is a logical extension of how various concepts are connected and arranged with each other. I hope I'm right in saying that.
Yes. And I would like, I mean, we will, when we come to Taratamya, we will tell this thing. See, it's not just about to explain this logic, right? At the end of it, when we are dealing with Atindriya Padartha, when we are dealing with things that are beyond our senses, you need to have evidence. What is that evidence? There is only one possible evidence, that is Agama. Only the Veda can tell you that thing. So we say that, basically the Veda is the one which tells us that this is the Taratamya that is out there. And that Taratamya culminates in Vishnu. Basically, yo devanam namadha eka eva, yo deveshu adhi eka eva. So it is very clear that, ontologically you have only one supreme thing. So there is another, to just take a little bit of diversion, right? I had seen a video from one set of Muslims actually, where that person says that logically it is establishable, there is only one supreme thing. He almost goes by similar logic.
Correct.
Okay. So, but they, of course, they culminate that in Allah or whatever it is. And we take the root of this one. So the interesting point is slightly different. The question is, see, according to us, and this is not just for Dvaita Vedanta, according all schools of Vedanta, Parabrahma, Ishvara, Dharma, Adharma, everything is known only through Agama. So that's why we say Vishnu is like Sadagamaika Vigneyam. He is known only through the Sadagamas, only through the Agamas. The Veda itself says, Veda hi enam Vedayanti. Pippalada Shaka. Acharya quotes this one.
Correct.
Nothing else can explain this thing. So on one hand, we are giving logic, which says that, you cannot have multiple independents. You cannot have everybody as dependent. You have to have exactly one independent. So where is this logic and the tenet that he is known only through Sadagama? How do you reconcile these things? So my idea of that, my solution to that was, or even to the Muslims, argument that a supreme God can be established purely on logic, is that there is a fundamental assumption we are making in that, which is that it is a deterministic world. In a deterministic world, the lame and the blind cannot come together just like that. But in where coincidences are there, where things like that are there, you cannot assume that they will meet, or you cannot assume they will not meet. So you cannot use that logic to establish a supreme Lord everywhere. So therefore, Shrimad Ananada Theertha's point that Vishnu is Kevala Agamaika Gneya, he can be known only through Agama, stands, because whether you have deterministic world or an undeterministic world, you do not know. What you have is evidence. What is that evidence? Veda only can be the evidence. Why is Veda only the evidence? Because it is Apaurusheya. And that Veda tells there is one God, from whom every Yatova Imani Bhutani Jayante, Yena Jatani Jivante, all the beings are born forth from there, and they are sustained by that person, that being, and then they enter him during their death, and even through moksha, abhisamvishanti, even at the time of moksha. So the Taittiriya Upanishad is and because the Veda tells that there is one such God, we get to know that there is one such God. Till then, it is just a decent, reasonable guess. But only when you have the evidence, and that evidence is Veda, only then you can say with conviction that there is God, and that God is Vishnu.
Okay? I think again, for the sake of audience, if we all recall, Krishna spent a lot of time establishing epistemology first. So now I think for the listeners, this would make a lot of sense as to why he did that. If for those concepts which transcend senses, Atindriya Padartha, as he said, if we have to rely only upon sacred text, then which one becomes the question? And therefore, even before taking the case of Atindriya Padartha like Ishvara, etc., it is important to define the boundary conditions, saying that these are the valid texts with which we are going to determine, and why we say these are the only texts which are referenced. He established that, and then when he keeps referring back, I'm sure he's going to talk about it multiple times in the future as well, as to why these things are discernible from only agama. He is going to hit this point again and again. So I would request the listeners to go back in their mind to recognize that is why he established epistemology first.
Thank you. So with that, let's come to the main point. So now that Vishnu being Swatantra, or there can be only one Swatantra is there, and that is known only through Agama. We go to the point, as you know, yeah, I had taken this class, so I will just use some of the slides over there to come to the point of the Visesha there. Okay. So we say Swatantro Bhagavan Vishnu Bhava Bhavo Dvidhetarat. So there is only one Swatantra, that is Bhagavan Vishnu. And then, you know, the ontology, which means basically the classification of different entities and subcategories and all those things, they are established later. Another important point, I mean, you know, this again is slightly a little bit of diversion, is that, see, this ontology, whatever Acharya has done, he is very clear that it has a purpose. Okay. So see, I may have multiple ways of classifying a given system. Okay. So I may want to classify, for example, take this house itself, right? If you say take the house, if I say, you know, classify it based on, you know, how it is getting used or which time of the day it is getting used, you will come up with one classification scheme. If you take up the house and then say, you know what, list down all the material, look at all the chemicals that are involved over here, you will come up with a different classification scheme. If I say, you know what, depending on, you know, where potential energy or kinetic energy is there, you'll get a different type of classification scheme. So eventually all classification schemes need to have a purpose. So Acharya's purpose is to highlight the fact is Vishnu is Swatantra, everything is dependent on him. Whether you call it Bhava, Abhava, you know, being, non-being, and whatever we call Taratamya, even he says, even something like a rabbit's hair, a hare's horns that are considered asat, that are considered, you know, unreal, not unreal, non-existent. Even those non-existent entities are dependent on Vishnu. If he were to will that, look, from tomorrow I want these hairs horns, they'll come.
Correct. Correct.
Right? I mean, so therefore, the purpose of ontology is to understand that everything is in Vishnu's will and control. In fact, Jayatirtha says this thing, you know, that is what distinguishes our ontology from, you know, Ganga Valuka Gananavat. He says, you know, this is like counting the sand particles on the Ganga Tira, and then, you know, trying to, you know, classify them. You know, this is of this granularity, you know, of this sound. You can do a classification on that also. How is your classification useful to mankind compared to that one? It is simply because this one will lead to Adhyatma Jnana. So that, I think, you know, is general across the schools also. They had to think of this purpose. You know, why am I classifying?
Right.
It's an important thing. And Acharya's purpose, I think we have mentioned that. Now, let me come to the main point here. Are you able to see my screen now?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. So see, this is the idea is that, you know, let's take this thing, right? I'll go to the next slide itself. The question here is, you know, what is the relation between a substance and its qualities? Okay. So let's take that apple, you know, I mean, please pardon my very bad, this one.
Which one?
The slide. I mean, the idea is this is apple, you have a form, you have color, you have taste, you have all these attributes.
Correct.
So when I ask about the relation, right? The relation can be twice, two of them. So you say, you know what, the entity, the thing, the substance is identical to its attributes. One way of putting it. Another way, which is what I think many people take up, is they are different. The substance is different, the qualities are different. The standard Nyaya model considers them different. Okay, and everything, all other schools, whichever build on the same assumption, they take the same thing. The Visishtadvaitas, they say that they are different, but they are inseparable, basically. Aprathak Siddha. Okay. Now, the point is that both of them have their, pros and cons in both models. Okay. If you say they are identical, you know, sometimes things change. Correct. The color can change. right? And but the substance is still around.
Correct.
So when you have absolute identity, how can different things be different?
Correct.
That is the problem there. On the other hand, if you say they are totally different, what is that substance which is not, which is different or which is extra from the set of its qualities, right? So there is nothing, there is no substance then. It is all, one collection of attributes. And what is that collection? That collection also doesn't make sense. It is just in your mind.
Yeah.
So some people, right, some schools of thought, basically they try to say, that is why they kind of, what is the relation between the qualia and the qualified, and when you go into all these debates, so people take the idealistic schools, right? They try to take the this one, that there is actually nothing out there or something like that, or they said there is only one thing which is quality less, on which all qualities are superimposed. So you have these different called theories. Correct. So what Acharya has said that is to basically, you should use your you should form your theory after getting the data. You shouldn't change the data just because it doesn't suit your theory, right? So Acharya says our experience says that they both of these things are real. Okay, both of these things are real. You cannot what do you call? There is some sense of identity also, and then there is some sense of difference also. So he says that this is possible because this is not absolute identity, but a colorful identity. He gives it a different name. It is another type of abheda, which is another type of identity, but it is not absolute identity like saying 3 is equal to 3 or Rama is equal to Rama.
This is Visesha abheda, right?
Visesha abheda. So that's what I'm trying to point here. Okay. And this is important not just for our worldly transactions or anything like that, right? So for example, what is the contradiction, relation between Vishnu and Vishnu's Ananda?
Correct.
Right? If you say they are different, you are in trouble. Where is this Ananda coming from? Then he is dependent on that Ananda and he is not really Swatantra. If he is identical, how can you then say Vishnu's, that how can that relationship be there? Right. So that is why it is essential for us to acknowledge the fact that our experiences gives in both identity and difference, and that it is basically, so what Acharya says, there is a long debate on how do you understand this Savisesha Bheda. Okay, why can't it be that Bheda is the real thing, but it is allowing identity, the Vyavahara, the transactions of identity. So I will not get into that. So our conclusion is that the best logical model is to acknowledge these two, identity and difference between substance and its qualities, and you should say that fundamentally they are identical, but it enables Bheda Vyavahara, which enables you to transact as if they are different. This is an important thing. I will come to this when we talk about, for example, Anandamayadhikarana or some place like that. This becomes important. So, and this is not just for attributes. Even for example, what is the relation between Vishnu and Vishnu's Srishti karma? Okay, whatever that kriya he has done, right? Srishti is this one is what do you call what gets created is different from him is acknowledged. But the act of creating and the actor, the agent, right? What is the relationship? It has to be Savisesha Bheda. Okay. So there is a long, what do you call? So this Savisesha thing, right? The Visesha is the thing that enables Bheda Vyavahara, that enables transactions, that enables you to act as if they are different, even when there is identity. And any identity that is identified or that is perceived through the agency of a Visesha is called Savisesha Abheda. So that it will take a little while for us to accept this thing, but I will stop here and I will show you some more cases where it is needed. It is not just between, this is what we look at him as. You're able to see my screen?
Yeah, I will, but before you go there, would you like to clarify some point? Today time. This Visesha Abheda concept, does it not tantalizingly similar to Aropa Vaada of Advaita.
Very good. So I have had that question also myself, saying that, when you say as if there is Bheda, right? Aren't you basically somewhere acknowledging that there is, what do you call, the Bheda is illusory. So our point is that, see, Bheda Vyavahara is not illusory. We are accepting that Bheda Vyavahara is real. We are saying only the Vyavahara is real, the Bheda is not. So then how can you do that Bheda thing when Bheda Vyavahara, when Bheda is not there? It will become equivalent to Brahma, right? It will become equivalent to an illusion. So our point is that, let's say we are all in illusion for the time being. Shruti is not in illusion, right? Shruti is dealing with Bhagavan's Ananda in both ways. Anandam Brahmano Vidwan, very clear. It says that Brahma's Ananda, whoever knows. Okay? And then it gives the further Falastuti. Yato vacho nivartante, that it will go there. Na bibheti kadachana. So that is how the Shruti goes. So there, the Shruti is talking about Bhagavan's Ananda, Bhagavan and his Ananda. And in another place, it will basically say Anando Brahma. Very clear. Ananda itself is Brahma.
Correct.
So the Bheda Vyavahara is also not illusory. Bheda Vyavahara would have been illusory if there was no Bheda enabler. That Bheda enabler is the Visesha. So therefore, it is not illusion. It is not something where you are trying to fill in an illogical thing out there. All we are saying is that look at the experience, look at the data around you, and then based on that form your theory, not the other way around. What will people say? You know what? Identity and difference cannot be together at one point. We also acknowledge that. All we are saying is that here we have identity only, difference is only in the Vyavahara. And what that Vyavahara is enabled through a Visesha. Therefore, the relation is actually Abheda, but it is not Nirvisesha Abheda, it is Savisesha Abheda. And we extend this thing to, Bhagavan and his Avayava, and, you can see the things there, right? Avayava is all the parts and things like that, right? And this Kriya. So this allows us to interpret Shrutis in many interesting ways, right? For example, if you tell, Rama has come, Parashurama has come, they try to, engage with a transaction there, right? They try to engage with a conversation. That is understandable, right? I mean, they can, and you are saying that, okay, if you want, what do you call, Shatru Samhara, do Narasimha Mantra Japa. If you want to do, Vaada Jaya, do Vedavyasa Mantra Japa. Right? Both are same. I mean, both are essentially the same. It is like, Narendra and Modi are one and the same at the end of it, right? But yeah, but I mean, at the end of it, you are still able to get what Visesha allows you to engage in as if there is a difference. It allows you to explain things where there is difference. For example, these devatas, they go and ask Vishnu, look, the earth is like in trouble with from these asuras, so please come and take avatara. So he will just pluck two strands of hair, one which is dark, another which is white, and he will say these will do the job. So those become Krishna and Balarama later. Okay, so for us, hair is jada. It is dead skin cells or whatever, right? Dead cells over there. Paramatma is not like that. For him, it is him and his hair, they are all one and the same.
Yes.
Okay. So that is the, so that is, my hair will do this. My hair, very clearly there. Okay. There is a Bheda Vyavahara, but they are actually identical. So that is the possibility that opens up because you acknowledge the fact that the world across you will keep telling you about something called as Visesha. And Acharya gives a very powerful argument in Anuvyakhyana saying why Visesha has to be agreed upon by everybody, including Advaitins. For example, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma is there, right?
Yep.
Satyam is absence of asatya, right? That is how Shankaracharya treats it, because he doesn't want to treat them as guna, because then, the Nirvisesha Brahma concept will go there, right? And this is a line which talks about Akhandartha of this line is Parabrahma for him, right? So Satya is absence of Asatya. Jnanam is absence of Ajnana. Anantam is absence of Parichinnatva. That is how he treats this thing. Now, if all of them were same, why should the Shruti repeat it? If all these absences were same, right? So people may say, you know what, it is like saying it is not red, it is not green, it is not black kind of thing. It doesn't mean there is something extra over here. So to that, Acharya says that even if that were the case, right, whatever thing is depicted, whatever thing is conveyed by saying this is not asatya, the same thing should have been conveyed by the other two also. Okay, because there is some Visesha at this end, that Visesha helps it distinguish this one, that is Parabrahma, from Satya. There is another Visesha which helps it differentiate that from Asatya. There is another Visesha that helps it differentiate from Santa, whichever has a limit. So therefore, Visesha has to be admitted by all schools of thought. And I mean, they have done it in a different way. Yes. But I think they all try to say there is difference and all those things. And Acharya has said that that is not the case. It leads to a lot of erroneous judgments. And so with that, you know, I will like to.
Yeah, can I summarize my understandings for clarity purposes? So is Acharya saying this way? One might argue that is not red, that is not black, that is not green. Okay, but it does not mean not red, not green, and not black is the same thing. It could be different also. And therefore, even if you use a negative way of explaining something, de-affirmation as an argument, that does not establish the singular basis on which all of them tied together. Even then, there are differences. Is that the argument?
They are not differences, nahi. There has to be some Visesha, there has to be something different, something special, yes. Right? But you say this, whatever Parabrahma that you are trying to define, so-called define, is different from Satya, Asatya.
Correct.
Is different from a non-real thing. To be able to say, okay, let's take Parabrahma. That is your one entity on the other hand. Then you have Asatya, which is an unreal entity like Shashavishana or, you know, hare's horns. And then there is some material, some jada is there. Okay, let's say there is a pot. Now, what according to Shankaracharya is that this Shruti is telling Parabrahma is different from this unreal entities like Shashavishana, Asat, okay, or like the Rajata or the silver that is seen in the naked. Then he's saying that the second one, which is Jnanam Brahma, right? Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. So Jnanam is saying that this Brahman is different from this Jada, which does not have Jnana. So what Acharya is saying that the first negation, the first difference, if it has to be different from the second difference, yes, there has to be something here in this Parabrahma which is different Visesha. This is a Visesha that enables this Parabrahma to be different from Asatya, and there is another Visesha which enables this Parabrahma to be different from the Jada. So without Visesha, you cannot even take the Advaitic meaning of that particular Shruti. Okay. He has a problem with the Advaitic meaning, the Akhandartha of that thing later, that's a different thing. But even to take that, you need Visesha, and you have acknowledged that is what Acharya points out. I like to establish some 2-3 other points. So Nyaya school also admits something called as Visesha, but that is not same as this. That is something which is against, that is juxtaposed against something called as Nitya, and then there is Visesha, and that is different. Nyaya Vaiseshika schools. So the word Visesha may be same in Nyaya school also, but that is different from what we have over here. The other point is that this is not, this is true even for not just Bhagavanta, right? This is not just for Parabrahma.
Yes.
This thing is true even for a Mukti Yogya Jiva, even for Jivas and Jadas also. So in Jada, what we say is that there are 2 types of qualities. One, which as long as the substance, which last as long as the substance, and Ayavad Dravya Bhavi, which do not last as long as the substance. So I have put the things over there. So Acharya gives many quotes and he gives many arguments, for example, in his Gita Tatparya Nirnaya and his Vishnu Tattva Nirnaya as to how do you, what is the relation between different type of attributes and that particular Jada. Now this thing is extended not just to, before I go there. This thing is not just to substance and its qualities. Viseshas are needed even to explain these things, right? Substance and related actions. I think we talked about this. The whole and the part. What is the relation between my hand and my body? Is it abheda or is it bheda? So it has to be Savisesha Bheda. It is Bheda and Savisesha Bheda because you can have the body without the hand also, okay, and so on and so forth. And look at, I have put the list over here. I think we will need to spend more time on this in the next class.
Is this from Vishnu Tattva Vinaya?
This is from Tattva Viveka.
Tattva Viveka, okay.
Yeah. Very important thing, change and the changed, right? So, for example, both Nayayikas and Advaita, they spend a lot of time in Satkaryavada or Asatkaryavada. Nayayikas are Asatkaryavada. You know, the Karya, the effect, was not there before the change happened. Advaita is different. It takes that the change was there before this thing, they are identical. So we take a Savisesha Bheda route here. We say that, you know, the change and the changed are Savisesha Bhinna. Okay. And that, for example, so if you take this, you have heard of the ship of the thesis problem. So if I take the ship and, you know, if I replace one part, is it your ship or somebody else's ship now? I mean, is the same ship or is it a new ship or a different ship? Right? I mean,
correct.
Yeah. I mean, if you change something in your house, if it is a new house, then you have no ownership on that.
Correct.
So what we say is that it is Savisesha Bhinna. So Karya Karana also have the relation of, you know, Savisesha Bheda. So it is needed everywhere across the gamut of the entire ontology. And wherever Bheda is not there, but Bheda Vyavahara is there, and it is given to us by pramana, we say that, you know, it is enabled through Visesha. And with that, I know that it is a little terse topic, but I would like to stop here so that people can do a little more thinking on this.
Yes.
And let's resume this thing in the next class so that we should be able to go a little more deep into details, and also tell, you know, where this comes for our advantage, the Tattvavadi's advantage later.
Okay. What is this institute, Purna Pramati Institute?
Oh, that's our school here. So we had taken one course for English-speaking people, and that is what, and it just concluded yesterday. So we took some, only on the weekends we spent some time with some people, and we try to teach them online. And we are now considering the next batch also. So this one was just the introductory part there. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I completely agree with you, because ultimately, if two philosophies look at what is visible as different entities and argue differently, one saying, oh, the differences are just notional, essentially everything at substrate level is same, and therefore let's forget about this. I'm oversimplifying, of course. Let's forget about the visible differences because they don't really matter. If somebody takes an argument and another person takes an argument, no, the differences are real. It is going to be there forever, and therefore we have to deal with it. Then there has to be some kind of a logical explanation as to why there are two different arguments about the differences. And that way you're trying to bring in, though I must admit that Savisesha Veda is a dicey concept, frankly. You know, you are, in my view, you are treading on thin ice. It's trying to what they call as a difference without a distinction kind of a thing you're trying to create. Because it does look like Aropavada, very much like Aropavada of Advaita, though at the surface level, though at the implication level, the way you are connecting to reality, absolute reality, Vishnu Tattva, etc., that takes it away. I don't deny that. But fact of the matter is, concept to concept, when you try to compare, this seems to be a difference without a distinction.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I have put this slide there. I think we will talk about this thing later. So I just wanted to place the thing there so that, you know.
No, very good. You're doing the right thing. These are all very, very difficult concepts to understand. Take your time to explain. And once again, I don't know, I've been saying it every time. I don't hesitate to say it again. What I like in your way of dealing is you're not throwing a lot of Sanskrit quotations and for anything and everything going to Tika Acharya, etc. Though the basis is what Tika Acharya says. For the viewers, it does not matter. I'm sorry you'll get aghast if I say this. You may get angry also. For them, you are the Tikacharya.
Oh.
You are providing the commentary. That's it. As far as they are concerned, whatever you're laying upon, your guidance laying upon is fine. Therefore, how you tell is very, very important. You're not explaining Tikacharya's work. You're explaining the concepts your own way with shall we say, as simple as possible and as little Sanskrit quotations as possible, because it doesn't matter to us, to ordinary audience, it doesn't matter. You are with it, okay, yeah, 10,000 books, yeah, so what? Yeah, so what do you want to quote? Can you make me understand a simple thing? That is more important. I believe that is where you are doing a phenomenal job. Thank you very much for that.
Krishna.
Namaste.